Good morning, television neighbors. So, interesting. There are no sidewalks here, but there's a bike lane, and it's apparently been plowed overnight, so that's what people are using to walk. Just a pro tip, in the state of Ohio, you're supposed to walk facing traffic. It doesn't look like the opposing bike lane, though, is plowed, nor is the sidewalk. So, but there is a sidewalk right there that the person could be walking on, so I don't know. Anyway, I wouldn't be walking in the street when it's all slick and icy, if at all it were avoidable. But anyway, today's topic is, I hope that, I'm not exactly sure how it's going to pan out, but I wanted to talk about honesty, the concept of honesty, how it relates to a wide variety of things, how I think it's really hard to really be honest in an everyday, like to be completely honest, and why I think that's the case. Namely, I think we're raised in an environment where honesty is not really taken seriously for the most part, and then we go out into a world where honesty is definitely not taken seriously. And even in places where people are supposed to be honest to help each other get things done, there's a lot of dishonesty. And I think a lot of that dishonesty stems from a variety of factors. One is delusions that people maintain. And, that's one of the things that is really hard, is that we all have delusions. They're all things that we believe to be true that are in fact not true. And it's very difficult sometimes to figure out what those are, because, if we're, it's really important to, to humans and everything to have something to go on. And so once they get something most of the way correct, then they tend to latch on to that way as long as it seems to be working for them, and even oftentimes beyond the point where it's actually working for them. So that's one of the problems with delusions, is that they're so appealing to maintain for a variety of reasons. And I would imagine that it's a system that has worked for a long time, but if we can be made aware of them, I think the evidence shows that when we stop, the whole pursuit of science has shown that there are things that humans believe to be true that work pretty well for a long time. And then once we realize that we didn't have it exactly right, then that opens up whole new possibilities for human achievement and accomplishment. And the same thing is true for individuals. So, you live in a world where there's all this science going on, and it's helping humanity grow in unprecedented ways. But if you don't, if you maintain a lot of delusions yourself, then you're not going to be able to live up to your full potential. Now, that's not to say that you can't be successful. In fact, one of the paradoxes about observing the delusions of others in order to try to discover delusions in oneself, I seem to notice that there are a lot of delusional billionaires out there. So you can't measure it just on success. You just have to, you have to learn, or you have to think about it from a logical standpoint, and look at the evidence of various beliefs, and then go from there and say, well, right now the preponderance of the evidence is showing that this is fact, so how would I conduct myself in a world where this is the case? And a lot of people, it doesn't really matter, it seems, for them. For one thing, a lot of people are underachieving to the standpoint, which is amazing to me, that they're underachieving, and then here we are, I'm surrounded by cars, each one costs thousands of dollars, sometimes many tens of thousands of dollars. And so it's really hard to kind of look at that and go, well, people by and large, they are delusional and they're not as successful as they could be. And a lot of people are content with how successful they are. But I can imagine a world where we were all like 10% more successful, or 20% more successful, or 50% more successful, because we've discarded delusions and we work really hard to look at our bad habits and eliminate them. I was really impressed with my daughter recently. She used to bite her nails, which I did myself when I was a child, and I think I did so up until about middle school, which is, wow, that's a long time. At the very least, through my childhood. And then I just stopped. I just decided that it wasn't, I just suddenly, just stopped, and, just to see if I could do it, kind of a self-control thing, I guess. And then I just never bit them again. I didn't go back. And it's weird because my daughter's 6, and she, we'd talk to her about the downsides of biting her nails, how, they would hurt and bleed and stuff like that. And if she bit them too much, and how it could spread germs, both she was putting her fingers in her mouth after touching things other people had touched, and then she was also spreading her own germs by getting saliva on everything. And so, I mean, it's pretty clear that in an age where you can trim your fingernails with other things, biting your fingernails is not something that, it's a bad habit. It's something that we should discard. And we didn't talk with her about it or anything. She just stopped. She's got these little fingernails now, and it's kind of it's just kind of interesting how it just happened. And but at the same token, is I have a coworker that will stand there in my office gnawing on his paws, like a wounded animal or something. Oh, excuse me. I seem to sneeze in twos. Unless I sneeze in threes, and then it's a sign that I may be getting a cold or something. But anyway, yeah, so that, that's just a really simple example of something where a lot of people continue to do things that are not particularly good for themselves or others, and they could have a more pleasant life, I think, even in some small way, if they were able to change their habits. And that's, I think, one of the reasons that people don't address their delusions, is because they become habits, or the habits are built around their delusions, and it's uncomfortable to change habits, so they stick with them. One thing that I encountered the other day is we were giving status reports to the team at work, and I had been talking just a couple minutes prior to one of the developers who was a little bit more familiar with some code than I was, and I was trying to debug it, and I was trying to just poke around and see if there was anything obvious I could find that was resulting in a bug that was causing the code to fail. And I've done this in the past, but I kind of forgot. It's one of those things where I've forgotten more than I don't know. I've forgotten a lot about how to do this. It's a really old technology. It dates back to 2008. And so I've forgotten about it, and it isn't one of my stronger suits. It's not an area where it's really disinteresting to me, so I didn't put a lot of resources into learning it well. But now I'm trying to help out the team on this. And we got pretty much everything done, except there's this one that was supposedly fixed, but then it went through testing, and we kind of split up the work and everything, and all the things I initially worked on are fixed, but now I'm kind of just helping out the team here fixing other things, because it's really our project. But I don't know, it's an interesting situation. But anyway, I was talking with this guy about it, who'd worked on it before and fixed it before for the most part, and he was talking to me, and I was saying very explicitly, well, I'm poking around blind here. I don't really have any clues as to what the idea is, or what the problem is. So I'm poking around kind of blind, and I don't really understand how to fix this problem, but I'm going to take a look at a couple of things, and I'll see if I can come up with some strategies and some ideas or things that don't look right to me, and then maybe I can come back to you and we can talk about them and maybe get some kind of strategy for finding the real source of this problem and fixing it. So, like, no further conversation ensued. To me, that's pretty explicitly, I don't know how to fix this. I'm going to look at things that look interesting like that it could be causing the problem, and then come back and get back with you later. Okay, because I have no idea how to fix this. So then the status reports come in, and the guy was talking about having conversations with me, and then he says, and I believe that Mark has all the information necessary to solve this problem. Well, what the heck is that? I mean, I just told him I don't. So is it wishful thinking? Or is it in a broader sense that, like, I believe that since Mark is a computer engineer and Google exists, that eventually, given enough time, he will be able to figure out the problem? I mean, it's really, it's kind of meaningless to me what he said if it has any truth to it. But on its face, to me, it seems like it seems untruthful. It's not honest, because he said that we had a long discussion about the task, and the core of that discussion was, I'm trying to figure out how to solve this problem. I'm not familiar with it. I'm just being honest. And the reason I was honest there is because I wanted to help. I had like a half day of work scheduled, so I knew I wasn't going to be able to work on it all day, and the boss had given some hints that he wanted it solved yesterday. So if I had to leave at noon no matter what, and it had to be done by the end of the day, then there had to be some kind of process there for handing it off if it still had to be done. So I needed to be very forthright and open and honest with my team members, because one of them might end up taking work if the boss thought it was important enough. Now, I don't think he did in the end. I think it was that important. So I'll be working on it some more today. But still, I like to put my team in a situation where they can succeed. So I was keeping my notes in OneNote in a location that was shared and linked on the Jira ticket and all this kind of stuff, which is what I always do, just in case. But I don't know, it's just very frustrating, to have, I mean, it could be that the employer, thought that, or that the employee that I was working with thought that he was being honest. But that's an interesting thing, is like, okay, well, I've established, through the facts of what were said, which I went back and I reread our chat just to see if it was possible that I could be misunderstood. And my honesty was very direct, that I didn't know how to solve the problem at that point. And so I was trying to convey that. But at the same time, it's like I don't understand. There has to be some kind of delusion there, or outright dishonesty. So there are, I guess, two ways that people can be dishonest. Is they can be delusional and think they're speaking the truth, or they can be dishonest and not be speaking the truth. And either one of them, I think, is problematic. And it may even be more problematic for the people who honestly think they're speaking the truth, because they're going to defend it to the death. So, I had another thing. I sent an email to my IT department, because all of a sudden my machine started just, like, I couldn't lock my workstation when I went away. I couldn't even hit Control-Alt-Delete. Like, everything worked fine. It's just, when I tried to do those things, nothing happened. And I've never had that problem happen on my home machines. So anyway, we've got, I sent it to our IT department, and the guy came back, and apparently he went snooping around on my machine, and he found a couple programs that were not installed by the corporation. Well, I'm a developer, so first of all, there are things that I'm investigating, proposing to my team that I may install and play with, and then after I finish playing with them, I will propose how we could use them to make our work better. And then there are other things that are very obviously, work related. Like I was running one of the so the language of the email was these. I've noticed some applications on your computer that are inappropriate for your work machine. And so what are these inappropriate things? Well, first of all, just for the sake of simplicity and keeping troubleshooting simple in general, I try to run a pretty skeleton machine, and I also try to only run Microsoft products. But there were a few tools that I had that were necessary for my job that were not Microsoft things. One of them was a thing called Xenu's Link Sleuth, which is, it's got a weird name. You might wonder why it's called that. It's written by some developer who apparently really hates Scientology enough that he named his program Xenu just to mess with Scientologists. But anyway, it's a really useful application, and it lets you crawl websites. So my inappropriate for business use of that was to go, and when I was building tests for every page in our product, which is a web-based product, I was using it to rough out a sitemap and get an idea for the scope of the project and the size. So apparently, when you're trying to test every page of a site, having a good sitemap is not just unnecessary, but inappropriate. So this goes there. Is it inappropriate? No, it is not inappropriate. Factually, it is not inappropriate if I need it for my job. So it can't be the truth. Okay? So this guy is either delusional or lying. So I kind of wonder what kind of delusions might result in that kind of accusatory language. Another thing that I was using that it was inappropriate for work is a software that is free, but you can get a subscription to it. And it's time management software. It's called Rescue Time. I probably should do a video about it, but I really recommend it. And what it does is it watches you. It watches all the applications you use, how much time you spend in them. And then it gives you a report so that looking back, you can be like, oh, wow, I felt really unproductive today. What do I need to focus on to be more productive in the future? And it goes and it tells you. And it could be that, maybe something interesting was happening. Maybe someone was testing out a new rocket, launching the car into to the asteroid belt or something like that. I don't know. Maybe something like that was happening and you were just distracted and not using the applications you typically use for work more. It's going to tell you, and it also sets little goals for you, like spend a certain amount of time each day doing, using this application or doing applications that are for this purpose. So it's a really cool application, and not only had I been using it for myself, but a couple months ago, management had a heart-to-heart with our team and said that essentially they felt that the team was goofing off too much at work. And so I went to my boss and I said, well, I've been using Rescue Time and I have telemetry data proving that I wasn't goofing off. But it sounds like if this kind of accusation is coming down from management, then it would be a wise application for other people on my team to at least know about. I would never want to require it, but I would certainly want to pitch it to them as a way that they could help be honest with themselves about how they're using their computer. So it actually it wasn't really mandated, but after the next set of one-on-ones with my old manager, everyone started coming to me with questions about how to get it running on their machine. So I thought that was an interesting coincidence. But nonetheless, in spite of the fact that this was mandated to be run on everyone on my team's machine, well, I don't know, not really mandated, but everyone did it, which is strange for my team. So it must have been mandated in some sense. But yeah, it's just interesting that kind of thing is deemed as inappropriate. And so I don't know. that kind of stuff really kind of bugs me when people say stuff like that. Because first of all, it wasn't just a private one-on-one conversation. This is like a group email to a bunch of high-ups in IT. And the insinuation was that instead of working on code, I've got these applications installed that have no legitimate purpose on work machines. And that's blatantly false. So, one of the things is this really affects, as someone who tries to be aware myself of my level of honesty, like if I don't know how to solve a problem right away, I'm honest with management so that they have an expectation of how long it will take. When I do my time tracking, I make little notes about what I was trying to accomplish, what obstacles I encountered, and what my next step is. Just very short, brief stuff like that. So I try to be as transparent as possible. And the thing is, if you're transparent, you can't lie all the time and be transparent. You have to be honest. You can't be sitting there just constantly lying about everything you're doing. And, that's generally my approach on social media as well. To the extent that the names aren't always taken, I usually go by my given name. And I think that helps keep me honest. I don't want to be seen as a liar, so I go out there and I use my real name in society, online and in person. And I had to even kick it up a notch because I ran for public office. So in theory, if anyone really thought I was going to win, they would send people to start digging up dirt on me. So I do stuff under my own name. That would make it really easy for them to do so. So I just have to keep everything honest. Now, I have used, when I do online gaming and stuff, I just had kind of like a nickname just because I didn't really want to use my real name there. But even there, I did it in such a way that I can prove absolutely that name belongs to me, which is the opposite of what you might do if you were trying for anonymity. So even though I didn't use my actual name, I intentionally used a name that I could prove was me. But yeah, so I don't know. Hopefully I've talked enough about like the way that I've viewed some of these interactions within a lens of honesty, with enough of a sense that you can start thinking about how honest the people are around you, and how if we had more honesty about these things, how it might affect the team. Like in the case of the guy telling the team that I had everything I needed to solve the problem myself. Essentially he's throwing me under the bus, because then if I go and I start asking a bunch of questions, well, I don't know why he's asking questions. He knows everything he needs to know. Well, I don't know. That just strikes me as kind of weird. Like, I don't even understand what the motivations are for that. I also thought it was kind of funny. I did a tweet about it, I think last night. I took a still from the launch of the Falcon Heavy the other day, which I really don't think that you can build something like that without a whole bunch of people who are being very honest with each other. And I would imagine that if you would look there, you would find higher than normal levels of honesty in the workplace interactions than, for example, a place that doesn't really get a lot done for the advancement of humanity. Because there are a lot of businesses out there that all they really do is tread water. They serve a service, and that's great, but they're not really breaking ground or innovating in a way that the whole of humanity is going to recognize. I think it's really hard. I was showing my wife the Falcon Heavy launch, and just as I was, she was pretty freaking blown away by the fact that they could simultaneously land 2 booster rockets right next to each other. That's like beyond what I would even imagine in sci-fi. I don't know, it may be in some sci-fi book you're familiar with, but I was blown away by that, and she was too. And there's a certain amount of pride for it, but it's completely unwarranted in my case, because yes, humanity has achieved this, but I played a very small part, if any part at all, just through my economic interactions with the rest of the free market, So it's not anything I would want to take credit for. And honestly, I shouldn't feel any pride in it. In fact, I should probably feel some shame that that kind of achievement is possible, and I am playing no part in anything remotely like that, even though my skill sets could contribute to something like that. So, I don't know. It gives me pause to think about how I'm using my skills. That's another thing too, is I was thinking about the honesty topic and things I might want to talk about. It's kind of funny, like the way I was thinking about, I've got some friends who are in transition right now. They're looking for work and they're interviewing, so they've had questions about interviewing, and I saw some videos recommended on how to interview well, and it looks like really good content for them and stuff. So I thought, I just thought it was interesting how honesty is such an important part of the job hunting process, and how dishonest with new hires employers often are. And to me, the fact that they're being dishonest is like, it should be a showstopper. Like, you shouldn't want to work with a dishonest company. And I was just thinking about that a little bit the other day, because one of our employees was terminated unexpectedly, one that I worked with quite frequently. And it was kind of a shock. It was one of these situations where, nobody seemed to know anything about it. And, or at least that's what they told me. They could have been dishonest. But then we went and we had essentially a bunch of conversations about it, and they didn't come off as honest conversations. They came off as cover-up. And it's really frustrating, because that's how a lot of these conversations, like at a lot of places I've worked, are. When people leave, management wants to be totally silent about it. And I understand there's a need for privacy, but here's what I would do if I were an employer. I would say, we're not going to talk about such and such situation. But if you're concerned about your future with the company, then here is a relevant, section of the employee handbook that you might want to review. And the thing is, that is, those two actions can be completely, completely separate. Now, there may be some aspect of employment law that that they feel they're being protected, but there are other examples where they feel, there are businesses put up no gun signs all the time, believing it protects them from liability from someone coming in and shooting the place up. But in my state, if you have a no gun sign, yes, you have no liability for people coming in and shooting up the place, which I think is ridiculous. But because you're denying people the lawful right to defend themselves, but you're also providing absolutely no protection to them. So you're turning your business into a victim zone. But also under the state law, if you don't have a sign prohibiting it, and people do carry firearms inside your workplace, and somehow that ends up injuring someone, then you're not liable for that either. So there's no liability case for these signs. But they have this delusion that they're protected from liability if they put a sign up. And, that's another thing that was brought up early on when they started having signs in Ohio, is that I would ask businesses why they had a no-gun sign. And they would tell me, well, we have a lot of really angry customers. Well, why the hell is that? What the heck are you doing to people to piss them off so much that they want to come in and shoot you? That's a pretty high level. Like, I don't think anyone I've ever dealt with disliked my service so much that they wanted to try to kill me. Maybe I'm wrong, but I guess I would have figured out by now, because I don't have any no gun signs around me. So yeah, I just think, that just there are just all these little things everywhere that are just inconsistent with reality. And I think we should strive to highlight these cases, bring attention to them, call them out for what they are. Inconsistent with reality, inconsistent with evidence. That got a guy fired at Google, apparently. But yeah, it needs to be said. And, the thing is, when it does get a guy fired at a company who's high profile and whatever, that should tell people about whether or not they should be dealing with that company, whether or not that company is centered around honesty or delusion, deception, and deceit. So anyway, I just would really recommend that people start trying to think about it in this way. Look at ways that other people are being dishonest and delusional, and find tactful ways of raising the counter evidence. Or if you don't want to be employed very long, don't worry about tact at all. But I think it's really important to just highlight these observations and say, I think this is really hurting us. I think in this situation, this information was necessary, and it was misreported, and I don't think we're being honest with ourselves. And I think if we were, it would have had this result instead, and we would be able to communicate with our customers better. We'd be able to help management plan better, and we'd get better work done overall. And then if you put it that way, and you get fired, you're better off. Seriously. So yeah, I guess that's my take on it for now. I think I have more to say on the subject later, but I just wanted to get people thinking about looking out for this stuff, thinking about applying it, and if you have any other examples that you've noticed, common mistakes, I would love to hear them, because I catch myself sometimes being less than honest with myself, less than honest with other people. I mean, I've tried to get into routines where I have to be honest, but it's just, dishonesty is so common that it can be hard when you're raised in an environment like our society, where it's so common, it can be sometimes hard for it to stand out, and it's hard to see the forest for the trees on stuff like that. So yeah, any examples that you have that you've seen in your own lives, that have frustrated you or that you've caught yourself doing, I'd love to read up on those in the comments. And if you know anyone who's ever been complaining about similar things, please send a link to them and ask them to give me a follow and a thumbs up. So anyway, that's it for me. Gonna head into work and focus on being as honest as I can as I get my work done, and hopefully I can knock out this ticket from yesterday